Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of our members for coming out this morning. It's great to see such a great turnout for this wonderful event. At the museum, it's kind of appropriate we're doing it this day because it's also Armed Forces Day. So we have a lot going on in the museum. Obviously, you're here for the first event. Armed Forces Day, I believe, is at 11. There's going to be a flag raising ceremony. And then this afternoon, we're having a talk on the history of airships. And I'll introduce that presenter in just a minute. As a matter of fact, before I do any formal introductions, a couple of thanks. First of all, to Chris Melander and his staff, exhibit staff, for putting all of this together. That was greatly supported by our IT department, as well as our technical services and many others. So we thank them for that. And I'll try to remember everybody in the audience that are guests of Dr. Holtgrew. Well, Dr. Holtgrew is here. There he is, right there. Dr. Holtgrew, who you'll be hearing in a minute from, but he brought an entourage with him, a support cast, if you will. There's, let's see, in the group from Maryland, Dr. Where is he there? Oh, yeah, Dr. Horst Scheimer. Dr. Scheimer is going to be the one presenting the history of airships this afternoon at 2 p.m. And we have another guest from Annapolis. Oh, over here, Steve and his wife Mary, who are from Annapolis, Maryland, good friends of the Holtgrews. They went into practice together many, many years ago back on the East Coast. Dr. Gibbon and his wife are right here. Dr. Gibbon is here from Seattle, but Dr. Gibbon, he is the one who introduced Dr. Holtgrew to the Museum of Flight several years ago, and as a result of that, we not only have the World War I collection that you're going to be seeing here in a minute, but you're also going to be treated to downstairs, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have, our World War II collection. So all total, Dr. Holtgrew has contributed 426 World War II aircraft and soon to be 152 World War I airplanes. And I would be remiss without mentioning our docent, Sandy Morton, who teamed with Dr. Holtgrew to build the Zeppelin that you're going to see, and you'll hear more about that. So with that, I'd like to bring Doug King, our CEO and president of the Museum of Flight. Doug, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mike. It's just really an honor to have Dr. Holtgrew and all of his guests here today. The only drawback is we had dinner with several of them last night, and there were just way too many urology stories. You know, my daughter is a gynecologist, and I thought that was bad enough. But, seriously, it really has been a delight to get to know Logan a little better, and his son Kent, and our guests from around the country. Let me just take a step back before we talk about exactly what we're here to do today, to talk about the mission of the museum and how all this fits into it. You know, this museum has grown from a room in Seattle Center in the early 1980s to this national level organization. We think in many ways better than that other little place in Washington, D.C. And we know educationally the foremost aviation and space museum in the world. And when you start talking about education, there's all sorts of that. There's the programs we do in the summer for young people, summer camps, school programs during the year, our aviation high school that's going to be built across the street, our Washington Aerospace Scholars, 140,000 young people every year now involved in our educational programs to help them understand the promise that lies ahead in science and technology careers, and particularly in aviation. But there's also the rest of us, you know, those of us who might love airplanes but don't know really a smidgen what our docents and people like Dr. Holtgrew do. And there's plenty for us to learn. And then there's the rest of the adult population who might have had a passing interest on an airplane, or ridden in an airplane, or maybe even never thought about airplanes, who get brought here by somebody else. And I can say this because I'm new to the museum. I've just been here since January and don't have anything to do with the creation of this place. This is the best aviation gallery in the world, this personal courage wing, for several reasons. One is that it engages those people who don't already love airplanes. It tells the story of the airplanes in the context of the time that they were built in, the people who flew them, the conditions, the politics, and of course the technology and the science that goes into them. You can't walk through this gallery and think about those kids in the trenches over there without being moved about how they felt on a day-to-day basis to watch these aviators fly overhead. I understand there wasn't much love lost even for the guys on their own side. But the pace of the technology is very accessible to young people today. So what we find a lot is young adults coming into the museum, people who have never thought about planes, and stop over here at the beginning at the Caproni, at the Italian, the first fighter ever, and realize this is only 10 years after humanity achieved its millennia-long dreams of flight. People have always thought about, I wonder if we could soar like the birds. And it wasn't until 1903 that the Wright brothers took that short flight, and the other pioneers at that time were motivated to follow on. And 10 years later, there's the aircraft right around the corner here. And of course, 4 years later, 6, 7 years later, there are these aircraft that are here. And so this hall tells that story, much like the personal computer industry of today, when we can, those of us that can look back far enough can remember before computers, and then certainly before home computers, and just about everybody can remember before the internet, which is now so ubiquitous and that we count on every day. This is that era in flight, when we went from nobody's ever done it to that, you know, in 15 short years. And so we can only tell part of that story in this room. We have some wonderful aircraft here. I think the best World War I collection anywhere. Real aircraft, the Jenny behind you, to get across to these young people, you know, that the inside of that plane really was wood, and it really was carpentry and seamstresses building those things. The technological advances, the best technology of the times, best thinking of the times. What are the challenges today? How do we create the second century of flight? And so many other things we can apply science and technology to make our world better and to solve problems. So that's the purpose. That's why we do this. But we can only do so much of it because you can only fit a certain number of airplanes in this room. If you're trying to do the scope of that time, you need something like what we're going to see today. I mean, the variety, the innovation, the small changes that made such a difference, the advances in technology, the advances in courage and technique, people trying things out and experimenting. We don't often think these days much about, as we watch the big new 747 or the 787 fly out here, we don't think much about experimenting. Well, you'll see some real experiments in here, some of which worked, some of which didn't work so well, some of which led to other things that worked better. And so we're just delighted to be able to display the entire range excuse me, of aircraft innovation in World War I, as we do downstairs in World War II already. I'm going to ask Dr. Holkrow to tell you a little bit about how this came about, because I find the story fascinating, both of why he decided to do this kind of thing, why he decided to put it here at this museum, and what he hopes it will accomplish. It really is an honor to have the collection here. I thank him for creating it. I thank Kent for making the donation to create the incredible display cases that I think are going to become an icon of this gallery. And I thank our exhibits crew and the other folks here at the museum, the docents, who contributed to vetting the facts about these. We had to make sure Dr. Holkrow got it right. So we had a whole committee to make sure that we went back and checked all the facts. He was very complimentary of that group, sort of. And it took that whole team to put it together. Many of you are in the room today, and we thank all of you. So.